Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Eyermann. I'm very excited to talk to you about my presentation today. Up here in the visual aid we can see a brain activity scan of a brain listening to music and a brain not listening to music. As we can see, the brain activity of the brain listening to music is a lot more than the brain not listening to music. Now brain activity and fine arts, they go hand in hand. But schools sometimes don't really realize this. Schools like to focus on a STEM-based curriculum because they believe that the mathematics, the sciences, the technologies, those are going to benefit a student's life more than any fine arts classes. And they're sure as heck going to make that school look a lot better with their test results and grades and averages and all that. But what schools don't realize is the beneficial and unmistakable impacts that fine arts can have on a student's life. And we're here to discuss why fine arts should still be in curriculums and should not be moved out of the way to be replaced by STEM educations. Now, I'm sure you all have been to a maybe pep rally, a high school marching band football game right in the halftime, band performance, choir performance, orchestra performance, a theater production, improv shows, or a regular show, or maybe even an art expo. I know myself, I've been a part of almost actually all of these sects of fine arts, and they've benefited my life in numerous ways that I can't even imagine to explain, just helping me academically and personally. Now today we're going to talk about brain activity in relation to fine arts, the positive effects on a student's life outside of fine arts, based by fine arts, and things we can do as students and adults, and people who might know kids who want to take fine arts classes, to keep fine arts classes in school as advocates. Now, the first point we're going to talk about is the benefits on the brain. One of the major cases for fine arts classes is its effects on the brain. A lot of people believe that fine arts classes are only going to affect the right hemisphere, which is a completely false-based accusation. Right and left hemispheres are both going to be affected by fine arts, as Eric Jensen, with a PhD in human development, says in his book detailing the benefits of fine arts, specifically music in this case. The neural synchrony ensembles increase both the brain's efficiency and effectiveness. These systems are well connected and located in the frontal, parietal, temporal lobes, as well as the cerebellum. The strongest studies support the value of music making in its spatial reasoning, creativity, and generalized mathematical skills. As we can see here, even music doesn't just benefit the right hemisphere of the brain, it benefits left mathematical skills, left spatial reasoning, all things outside of just the right hemisphere of the brain. A jumpstart on fine arts classes is a jumpstart to development for a child's brain. This is something that will help them as students for years down the line, maybe the rest of their life. When taking these fine arts classes, there's only benefits. But music isn't the only fine arts class that has a positive effect on the brain. As an article written by the Ashford University staff states, painting, sculpture, and other artwork increases blood flow to the brain by as much as 10%. Now, by increasing blood flow to the brain, it's able to get more done, increase productivity, and overall positively affect the user. Effects like this are going to remain constant throughout the education of the student who takes the fine arts classes, and the constant surrounding of art will produce effects like this in such great supplies. Now, fine arts aren't here just to benefit a student's brain. They're also going to benefit a student outside of that class's brain. You know, maybe in another class such as mathematics, or maybe another class such as science. There's going to be benefits to the student's personality as well. Schools with fine arts classes are made into a priority have numerous benefits that are associated with their students' academics and life in the school. In 1999, a woman named Rita Upaitis, a professor of arts education at Queen's University, was invited to take place in a study throughout 6 Canadian states that focused on a fine arts curriculum. Now, on those 6 states and schools that focused on the fine arts curriculum, where arts were made a priority, she says students had a higher SAT scores, were less likely to drop out of high school, and were more likely to complete college. As we can see, having an emphasis in fine arts on students can greatly impact not only their lives as students in the fine arts, but they can impact the school as well, and their positive outlooks on the school. Schools with higher SAT scores are going to look much better. Kids are going to stay in school more. Their attendance rates are going to be a lot higher. It looks good at the school. And they're going to complete college, which is going to ultimately insanely affect that student's academic career outside of just these fine arts classes. But these fine arts classes do not only affect other classes that a student may take, but how that student acts in general, their personality. In a study done by Daniel H. Bowen, with PhD, he looked to find empirical evidence that fine arts can help a student, which is very thin lines of that throughout the entire fine arts community, something not looked into until very recently. But he did find positive information, finding that increased students' art educational experiences reduces the proportion of students receiving a disciplinary infraction by 3.6 percentage points, and increases students' compassion for others by 0.08 of a standard deviation. All that means is a student taking fine arts classes is going to be more compassionate to other students, and they're also going to be a lot smarter about how they act with themselves and with other students, overall impacting their personality, which is going to help them years later down the line, something that will stick with them no matter how many fine arts classes they take. To take away this benefit is to actively know that you're taking away that ability to help with the discipline of a child. But fine arts, as we know, is something like I talked about that seems to be getting moved out of schools. And budgets are getting low, and people are getting angry about that. We, as advocates, are here to make sure that fine arts can stay in schools. And there are a lot of things, especially bills, that we can help with to keep that in mind. The arts is a hot topic when it comes to government funding. There are many supporters for the fine arts, but there are a lot of non-supporters too. In specific events, as we're all, I'm sure, familiar with the COVID-19 epidemic, during this crisis, students are unable to participate in most fine arts classes, and these are classes that rely on heavily in-person interactions. You can't do an improv class and have all of your Zoom people just start talking at the same time, as it wouldn't make sense. Now, these students and teachers are just out of their classes for now, and that is a definite toll on the budgets and the pricing and the financing for these classes. But luckily, a bill was passed due to the advocacy of fine arts teachers and fine arts students through Congress that, during this epidemic, included direct support for both nonprofit cultural organizations and state and local arts and humanity agents, and it also gave $75 million for the National Endowment for the Arts. So this is just a huge beneficiary for the arts programs, which is something that advocates like you and me and other students and other adults have definitely helped. Well, not all bills, though, have fine arts in mind. In Missouri, the place where I live, a proposition was made, Proposition S. Proposition S said that it would basically help constructing, renovating, improving, furnishing, and equipping school sites, land and district buildings, including but not limited to constructing an elementary school, classroom additions, and other facility improvements, making safety and accessibility improvements throughout the district. Sounds great, but their improvements to the fine arts curriculums and all their sites was immensely low, and that was very aggravating for all the fine arts teachers and students. While it gave $70 million to the schools of St. Louis County, its budget allocated to the fine arts were next to none. But talking with my teachers, though, I was able to get a good opinion on what the bill combined and how we could fix it. While I wasn't the sole person that was able to help with this issue, I was able to be there as an advocate, someone to help get this opinion into others' minds, and to actually make an act towards it by making phone calls to Congress, making phone calls to people, senators, getting people to really work to get this bill passed. It was my responsibility, and it was everyone's responsibility, and that is the kind of call to action that we are looking for when trying to keep fine arts in schools. Now, throughout this presentation, we talked about the fine arts and the effects that it has on the brain, the atmosphere around it, and some ways that we can get involved, some ways that we can help and know to look for when talking about fine arts curriculums. A student's education is their own, but without our help, advocacy, and impact, their opinions and options are at risk. We have to keep the fine arts alive in schools, not only for our sakes, but for those students' sakes. Thank you very much for listening.